So what happens when you've dated for 11 months, 11 days later, you are engaged, and where's the honeymoon? How does that take place? Where does that take place? There was no time of isolation. It was at the beginning of the school year, and it was wedding day on Thursday.
Second day of school.
Yeah, and we were in class on Friday. Hi, my name is Ricardo, and
I'm Christian, just like the religion.
see, I knew that was coming for us, having eloped after 11 days of engagement. Was there a sense that for you, am I being robbed, or am I missing something, or am I getting myself into something that I'm not ready for?
Being the youngest of my siblings, I've always looked forward to the big wedding day. And the dress, the shoes, just the hair and makeup, everything about it. And so when it came to our talk about eloping, it was like, oh no, like this is something completely different. Never thought it would be for me. I just always pictured family around, friends, big ceremony. And when it came for us to elope, I understood the reasoning why. I was living on campus, so instead of me staying on campus, I would save money, and that's what we did. So understanding that background side of it and financially what would work best for us, that's what we did. And we had already planned our big wedding in June. My sisters had
Yeah.
already planned our big wedding in June. So yeah, I never felt we missed out on something besides for having our family in the presence of everything that was happening. I felt the care and support of our friends that were there at the school, just the way they showed up in so many different ways. You feel like you missed out on anything?
Not necessarily felt like I missed, but because of not having families around, so there was no pressure. There was no, it has to be this big, and our reasoning was just, and it wasn't just, hey, we're in love, let's get married. Because where we were at Bible college, there were a lot of 2-week dating weddings where we dated each other for 2 weeks and now we're married. I thought at the time where we were both mature enough, and primarily with your family support, because there's a lot of that did not get across to my family. Day one, married. Day two, life. Because you still had to go to work. Not having that moment where they can pause and take some time away, or that honeymoon stage where you expect, man, I'm going to enjoy that. Now, again, we say our honeymoon was delayed. It wasn't canceled because when we did do the big ceremony in June, we were able to go away. My brothers came together and said, hey, we're going to pay for your honeymoon, and they paid for us
Yes,
to go to
thank you,
Jamaica.
brothers.
We are now married, and you moved into my attic apartment in Mobley, and not a whole lot of space. So we had a 1 bedroom, we had a living room,
Large hallway and a
yes,
kitchen.
and a kitchen.
bathroom.
So now moving into that territory, what was some of the challenges that you confronted?
We get into this attic apartment with just the two of us. It felt like we had enough space because we hadn't lived together before we got married. So this is where things get real. So understanding how someone else lives and how they do things differently. Again, we did not have marital counseling beforehand. So there were things we did not discuss, didn't talk about. Like one thing I noticed was like laundry.
Well, before you get there, but I think
What you got?
I think it's important with 11 days. There's no way you get counseling in.
Oh, we did something.
This wasn't we dated twice, we went to Burger King, and now we're in love, we got to get married. They've seen us throughout campus and be able to do that. But yes, okay, so laundry, getting into the house, and that was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah. So now we get to dive into the living together. We went right into our kind of honeymoon, but not honeymoon because we did not travel away. It was, what would you call it? A stay moon?
We had 1 day off. Yeah.
Yeah, we had that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then into Monday.
Yeah.
So Mondays we had off. But again, this is where we begin to learn about one another. So I talk about the laundry because it's something that has to get done. So my thing is clothes basket, clothes. If your clothes do not make it into the clothes basket, they stay there on the floor.
They were
So
close enough to the basket as if they were touching. So that counts.
no thank you. No thank you. In the basket.
Okay, so laundry, because again, as a guy living alone for the majority of my time and at Central, that wasn't a problem. And so now I was continuing my lifestyle, and now she's coming in with a different set of expectations. And so for me, that wasn't an issue. All right, throw my clothes there. When I'm doing laundry, pick everything up, and I'm good to go. But now she's coming in.
Yeah.
She sees that because now our expectation and lifestyle has been different. The other thing she'll maybe talk about is even the way I cook early on, to say, okay, if I'm cooking something, I'm going to use as many dishes as possible. And so that was an adjustment.
He's telling the truth. I'm glad you told that part of the
Because
story.
you were going to bring it up anyway. But so is this part of that adjustment? So what was it? What was your resolution into, okay, he needs to change, I need to adjust, or this is the way it is? What did you navigate through in the early stages?
It's hard to remember exactly way back when, but I think the first thought was something needs to change. And it was trying to navigate as to how that change would happen. I love the fact that you can cook because, if you don't cook,
Because you got to eat.
exactly. So we have to make this work. So getting upset and saying, hey, you're using a lot of dishes, this is not going to work. Appreciating that this is something he does that he enjoys.
But I think it's just adjusting to, we ended up having a conversation, navigating that. There was some other stuff that we're trying to adjust to. And I don't think we were communicating because it wasn't part of necessarily our practice. So we just held on to things or navigate around it. And I think at some point we had a friend who was studying counseling come in and just mediate between, okay, why is he using all the dishes? And so we got to the point where we started to formulate boundaries or even communicate expectations. Now, it wasn't all comprehensive. It wasn't, okay, these are the things that we needed. It was simple things like, understand this is the way I function when I'm in the kitchen, right? It was, okay, if I'm cooking this, that's how I go. And it was to have an understanding, compromise, okay, all right, if you're going to handle the cooking, my responsibility becomes to handle the cleaning. And
so we agreed.
And at that point, it was no longer an issue that caused tension, that it became acceptable, even if it wasn't, oh, wow, you use all the dishes. There was none of that.
You stopped using all the dishes.
No, I don't think I stopped. I think it was just an adjustment because maybe I did not use as much. And it was all depending on what I was cooking. And that first few weeks, adjusting, navigating life, our new lives together, our classes together, we've learned very quickly. If she took a class the previous semester and I'm taking it, I'm not going to buy the book. She already has it. If we were taking the same class but different time, we bought one set of books so that we just rotated.
Yes.
So we just find ways to really enjoy our new life together and developing that as we go. And fast forward a bit as we learn and navigate, and from that first date to through our wedding the first time and through our first couple of weeks, couple of months together, we eventually ended up getting involved in ministry together. I was now serving as the youth pastor or youth director, and we are in it together. And so that started our lives serving in ministry together. So there was no, okay, I'll be going to work and she's at home. We eventually graduated Bible college. We now moved back to Chicago. We were staying at your mom's place for a few months, waiting. We were the in between and trying to figure out what was next. Now I've got my first full-time job or as a licensed worker with the Christian Missionary Alliance, that is at Syracuse Alliance Church, where we met some amazing people, love the community that was there. But before we got there, we experienced something very scary and tragic.
But the beginning of that was something amazing.
Which was you talking about?
So before he accepted the position at Syracuse Alliance, I was working at school. He was working at some place. It's been 20 years, guys.
I was doing tech support for a
A
company.
company.
Yep.
It's someplace.
Yep.
So we find out that we are expecting our first one.
Yeah.
And I'm very excited, nervous, just, oh man, we are at my mom's place looking for a job. So interview at Syracuse Alliance, and we're expecting our firstborn. Did the interview, got the job, and then we headed to Missouri to pack up everything that we had left there. And as I'm getting off of the moving truck, I heard a and gush. So I'm like, Ricardo, come here. Trying to stay calm as possible. Something's not right. I need your help. And get over to him. He comes over to me and he sees it. This is something that only God can plan out, have in his hands completely. While we were at the church house loading up our things, who was there? Dr. Ross, doctor. And right away, he just, I don't know, just it felt like he didn't carry me, but it just felt like we were carried so well in that situation. He contacted the nearest hospital, got his wife over, and it was just like moving from one space to another in the confusion that we were in the terrified stage that we were in. They were calm. They knew how to move from one moment to the next moment. What was it like for you in the moment that I told you this is happening?
This is about 4 years, almost 4 years after we were married. And of course, we weren't necessarily planning to have children.
At that time.
At the time. So being at that state, to be honest, my initial gut reaction was everything is all right, even when it wasn't. Then there was no panic yet. I think the moment in which I really panicked and was scared is after hours and they ran through all the tests and we're now into a room where you've been admitted, and now they brought in, there were different doctors and nurses going in and out. They finally brought in the neonatal unit.
Okay.
And when they sat down and they said, hey, we need to have this conversation. And at that point, my heart dropped because I'm like, okay, what are they going to tell me? And so they pull out this book, this binder.
I remember that
Yeah,
binder.
they pull out the binder and they tell us of all, they're telling me all the possible ways things can go wrong. And each time they were telling me what things could go wrong, they also try to give a little bit of, if that doesn't go wrong, then this could happen, but it won't be great. So one of the statistics that they gave to me was, because at the stage, because at that point you were about 23, 24 weeks pregnant, and they said if we actually deliver this baby, there is a 90% chance that she will not be able to function well. I remember in that room, as they were telling me all these different things, there was this weight of pressure that came on. Because what they wanted to know is, what do you want to do? They want to know, okay, what is your decision? And how do you make a decision like that? How do you make a decision to whatever the outcome should be, where you get to decide whether this baby will live? And I don't know any of you or those who listen to this have any sort of experience like that, to be at that place was probably the most frightening, scariest thing, and most confusing thing that I've been involved in, probably for a really long time, or at least maybe at that point for the first time. And so it was scary for me, but somewhat hopeful. But and there's a lot to this story as we developed our conversations here that we want to draw from that and see how God was at work and continues to be at work. And so if we were to fast forward 16 years from that, Michaela is here in 16, and we get to celebrate a lot of that because of who God is. And again, you're getting a snippet of the story, and maybe at some point we will circle back to that because there were so many key elements that was at play in this. I think this is part of all in the making of why for us ministry is not this sliver, parenting is not this other part, and being a husband is not just this other part. It's all intertwined together. How does a father who happens to be a pastor separate that? Now, we do it. We compartmentalize, we segregate, we put our own pain and struggle to the side because we've been called to something greater. We have to be joyous and encouraging and uplifting even when we ourselves are in need of it. And so that's not a stage of hypocrisy. It's living up to the expectation, living up to the demands. And so while marriage is such an important part, and we didn't jump into marriage lightly.
Although it was quick.
It was quick.
We talked to one another, wanting to make sure, hey, this is it. My whole purpose. And he knew from the beginning, like, if we're going to date, I'm looking for marriage. So if that's not something that you want, say goodbye right now. Let's not even continue a second date or a third date, because if we're doing, this is it.
Yeah, and it's not without its challenges to be able to continue to grow into a 20, 30, 40, 50-year marriage. Marriage ultimately has to be a decision to continually or constantly say yes.
To each other.
Yeah.
Being a pastor's wife, it's a calling all in itself. And my ministry to my husband and to our kids, that's where I am. That's where I know God has called me. And when I say yes to my family, I'm okay with a no being somewhere else. And so I need people to understand it is okay, that someone may disagree. It's okay, because this is where God has called me.
My first calling, my first ministry is here. I am a husband, I am a father, and I get to pastor. But if anything were to happen to me as a pastor, in a matter of a year or 2 or 3, the church will hire another pastor. My children don't get to choose another father. I am of greater value here in this context. Now, I don't minimize the other roles that I play in as a pastor, as a shepherd, leader, whatever that is. I enjoy those fully, but ultimately, my commitment, my first commitment is to God. Second is to my family. Third is to church. Fourth is to the community. And so if I am able to live out those fully as I am or as I am made, then I think that's where the greater impact is. Mm-hmm. And so our marriage, our lives are a continuation of life and ministry, not life then ministry, nor ministry then life. We live as such to anchor ourselves into the reality of what we're called to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good.
Any other
way to go
thoughts before we conclude the session?
His heart was always in his calling to be a pastor. So our focus was, hey, wherever God calls us, that's where we go. So if you're with someone and you think, hey, he'll change his mind or she'll change her mind and we'll go to this place where we feel God is calling us or where I feel God is calling me, but you can't leave your spouse behind. You have to be in agreement together. And don't just think it'll change once you're married. And that happens with other topics too. We'll get into that one later.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, and
it's
ministry as a single person is very different than
mhm.
ministry as a married couple because one, you're both listening to God. Second, you're listening to each other.
Yeah.
And sometimes if my wife is very quiet and she doesn't really voice her opinion, then I can drag her in a situation that makes our lives even more miserable than it needs to be. But for her to feel a sense that, okay, I don't think this is it. Now, doesn't always mean that it's right, nor is me saying this is it always mean that it's right. Because I think the calling, and again, that may be a personal preference or personal viewpoint. I think the calling to ministry is always y'all versus just you in a marriage. Okay. Biblical moment here. When God called Abraham or Abram at the time, he says, leave your country, leave your father's household. I'll send you to a land. And he didn't say leave her behind. He didn't say leave Sarah behind. He went to Sarah and said, hey, God told me to do this and we're going to go. And if she had said no, we don't get to talk about him today. And take that into account wherever, and again, if that's you, an area of ministry, and I know that not everybody who's listening or watching these episodes are into full-time ministry like we are, but as you are in a marital relationship as a Christian, your ministry is together. We have a dynamic that's not necessarily applicable for everybody. This is our decision from very early on. This is how we do ministry. Life and ministry intertwine as a singular unit versus, hey, kids, honey, I'll be back. All right, I'll see you when I get. That just doesn't work for us. And so that's a dynamic we are living into. But there's this separation at the same time where my roles, my responsibility, the confidence that is instilled in me, I don't come home and say, hey, Chris, I just had a conversation with so-and-so. Oh, let me tell you, I will never come to her and complain about those things because in fear and protection, that her mind would be made up based on my feeling. Those are the burdens and the weight that I carry. But ultimately, we serve, we love as a family, and we do that as much as we can.
Yeah. And I think it's important that you share that because there are times when people come to me with topics and I have no clue what they're talking about. What you share with him, he does not come home and share with me. Yeah. So I think it's important to get that out there and let it be known. Another note that I want to share that I appreciate and love that you do whenever we interview or he accepts a position at a church, one thing he shares from the pulpit is you hired me, not my wife.
Yep.
The expectation for me to just say, hey, I'm going to do this ministry, that ministry. No. Again, my ministry is to God first, my husband, our kids, and that's where it is. Now, in the time after I'm praying about it, I hear God telling me, Holy Spirit telling me, hey, this is where I need you to serve, then I will follow. And that's what I've done. Again, I've stayed home with Michaela and for the past 16 years and everyone else, all the other kids that we've had. And I've served, volunteered in different ministries of our church. And that has been so wonderful, but there's never been an expectation of, hey, Chris, because your husband is a pastor here, we need you to do this.
And we'll wrap up here, but I do want to give credit to my first boss, Tom Berner, where I remember sitting in his office during the interview process and conversation, whether it was just me and him, with him saying that and reinforcing that to say, hey, Ricardo, we're hiring you, not Christian. She's welcome to serve. She's welcome to participate. She's welcome to
Came from
be.
him?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And he helped me build and create a culture of home first or as a priority than everything else. And over since 2008, those times where we were transitioning from one to another, that's something I've carried because that was such a needed reality check because we grew up in an environment, church's environment, where the pastor's wife, the first lady, was, and that's a whole different conversation, or we don't apply that. And I jokingly will say she's not the first lady, she's the only lady.
That's right.
And that's not just a joke, it's a reality, but I know this in the
Mhm.
context of tradition. But we grew up in context where the first lady was always the hat, the chair, the positions, and all of that. And we grew away from that. And God has pulled us away from that. Now, if that's your environment, that's fine. It's not applicable to us in the way that we've construct our viewpoint in our family. And so we value, my wife is valued first at home as a wife, mother. And when we step into the church building, she is valued as the pastor's wife and respected in that aspect. But the expectations of whatever that may be translated to is not there as much. And we're grateful for that. We're grateful for the respect and the love that we do get over the years. And we've had the joy or pleasure of pastoring or be involved in many churches. And it's been really nice to watch that being honored. And we want to thank you for watching and listening wherever you may be. And what is one thing that you pull from this conversation? What is one question or two that you have? If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to, whether it's a comment or email, or you can always reach out to us. We'd love to have this ongoing conversation with you as we continue to share our stories with you. And if you have your own story of whether it's cross-cultural, ministry, relationship, we would love to hear it. And interact with us and engage with us in whatever shape or form that you can.
Yeah, or even like how long people have been engaged before they got married.
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting to see. And then how long have you been married?
So if you can give us those, we would love to take that in to start maybe we start our own little series, Engaged, Married in 20 days or less, or 30 days or less. So
That
we'll start
sounds
our
like
own
a TV show.
We do thank you for watching or listening to this episode of Me and My Pod. As always, we invite you to be part of our pod. Join the pod, whether it's liking and subscribing, commenting, or just joining us in any ways that you can. Share this episode with someone. We want to get the word out. We want to grow this channel as much as possible so that we can share our stories with as many people as we possibly can. And we need your help to do that. So again, thank you for being part of this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm Ricardo.
I'm Christian.
And we'd love to have you be part of the pod.